The Enneagram is a personality model that consists of 9 main overarching types that interact with one another in unique ways. Tonight, Beth will provide us with a basic introduction to the Enneagram and help us gain insights into what type we may be and how to apply that insight. Beth is a certified Enneagram teacher and has been using the Enneagram to help people, teams, and organizations find expansiveness, compassion, and clarity for 5 years. So, welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here and for welcoming me into your group. I'm just going to give you a little overview of what I'll be doing today. I'm going to start out with just sort of a general description of the Enneagram, kind of a little bit of the background, what it kind of means. And then I'm going to spend most of our time looking at the 9 types, 1 through 9, because that's really where most people's interest lies. And that's really kind of the easy way in. And I'm going to talk about each type for about 5 minutes, hopefully a little less, and then open the floor up for a few questions. But there is a lot of information here, so I'm going to try to keep us moving forward at the same time. And then at the end, I'll answer some common questions people have. What do those lines mean? What is my wing? What can I do with this information? Where do I find out more? So I'll address some of that too. But before I get into all of that, I would like you to join me in a short sort of grounding exercise to kind of build our presence. So wherever you're at, make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes, find something in the distance to look at softly. And just take a quick or a deep breath. And we all come here together at the end of our day. We've all been doing many different things. So I just want you to think about those things. Think about where you've been today, what you've been doing, what's still on your mind about tomorrow. And look at all of that as non-judgmentally as possible. But just see it. Realize it's there. Now I'm going to ask you to take another deep breath. And as you let go, sink into whatever you're sitting on. Just let your body sink. Feel that support. Feel the support of the floor or the cushion or the footstool or whatever is under your feet. If you're leaning on something, feel that. Feel where you connect with the space around you. Take some time to notice what temperature you are. Well, how does the room feel around you? Notice where your energy is. Are you tired? Are you excited? Are you running a little fast? Just notice that energy. And now just take a quick scan down your body and notice what's tight or what hurts, or maybe what used to hurt but doesn't anymore. You don't have to change it. You don't have to try to relax anything. Just notice it. I want you to take another deep breath, and this time feel it in your chest. And as you feel your ribs and your chest rise and drop, feel that energy in your heart area. And I want you to surround that area with warmth. And see if you can feel that area soften and get larger and more expansive. And just keep feeding all the energy you can into that space around your heart, under your ribs. And now finally, take one more breath, and this time feel it up in your sinuses. And move your attention to your head. Do you notice that what you're thinking about has changed? Maybe your thoughts have slowed a little bit. Maybe you feel a little clarity you didn't before. So just notice how your thinking is different than it was just a couple minutes ago. And then when you're ready, you can come on back and join us in our virtual space here. So one of the reasons I do that is because my day was stressful and I was harried, and I didn't feel I could be present with you until I did something like that. And I think it helps us because we all bring our life to these events, and it affects how we interact with them. So I think it's good to acknowledge that. But the Enneagram is about those three areas. The body, we talk about the body center, and there's 9 types. 3 of them are in the body center. 3 of them are in the heart center, and 3 of them are in the head center. And we need to be healthy in all 3 of those areas, but a lot of times we're not. Sometimes we're not healthy in any of those areas. So a lot of the work of doing the Enneagram is to notice how I feel physically, to notice where my energy is at, to notice how my heart feels, what am I feeling, and to what's really hard is to notice what I'm thinking and to separate myself from those thoughts. So I can say, that's not reality, that's not me, that's a thought. So I'll get into more of that as we go forward. But now that we're all kind of in touch with our centers, I'll fill you in a little bit on the Enneagram. And Enneagram basically means a picture of 9, gram, like telegram, other gram words, Instagram. And Ennea is Greek for 9. So it's looking at 9 different personality types. And it can be very math-based. Hope and I were just talking about this in the beginning. I am not a math-based person. So I don't go, that part does not intrigue me. If you are, when you're done with that, intrigued, you want to figure out how math and the sacred geometry fits into all of this, I will urge you to look up Gurdjieff, because that's where a lot of that comes from. So there's some of that in the Enneagram. There's some of sort of some ancient Sufi traditions in it, and also kind of a whole lot of progressive, hippie-based 70s Catholicism. The Enneagram, as we know it, was pretty much developed by a couple of Catholic priests in the 70s in Berkeley. And they were talking with a psychologist, and they started putting these pieces together, and all of a sudden things started making amazing amounts of sense to them. And I think that's the thing that has pulled me into the Enneagram, is I'm very curious and things are interesting, but all of a sudden, as I started reading about my type, it was like a bolt of lightning. And it made so much sense. It put so much of my personal life, my personal struggles into glaring clarity. And so that's why I'm very passionate about it. So the basic idea behind the Enneagram is we all come into this world whole, right? We haven't had to do anything when we are inside our mothers to get our needs met. Nutrition, blood, everything, it just happens. And infancy is not that much different. We have maybe 3 or 4 needs as infants. We need to be warm, we need to be fed, we need to rest when we are tired, we need to be comfortable, and all of those can be met by crying. We cry, we fuss, somebody comes over, and magically food appears in our stomach. It's pretty simple to get those needs met. But about the time we are maybe 18 months 2 years, if you've spent much time around children, you know this look. You can see a light starting to come on behind those eyes that says, whoa, this thing that I am and that I just entered is way more complicated than I ever imagined. And all of a sudden, I need things that I don't even have words for yet. I need control. I need security, a sense of security. I need to feel loved. I need to feel like I belong to a community. I need to feel like I'm worth something. I need this weird thing called joy. I don't even know what that is, but I need it. So we've got these little people trying to make sense of this huge, complex experience we call being a human. And so they've got a need, and it's not being met. Not because the parents are abusive or neglectful, although certainly we know that happens, but really because the parents are also humans who are very complex and are not getting all their needs met. And, even when everybody's trying to do their best, that little child has a need that's not met. And so they try something and that need gets met. So they try it again and it works again. And pretty soon that becomes their key to understanding everything. Now, that's all very up here, very big. Let me make it very practical for you. I am a type 6. My need is security. And I tend to be a risk taker, so that always struck me as kind of odd. But I do need to know. I need certainty. One of my earliest memories, well, I was probably about 4 years old, and my dad took me to a shopping mall. Brand new shopping mall in town, and I'm sure I was driving my mom nuts. Let's just let her run up and down the shopping mall a little bit. So we went in, we walked up and down this mall, and I remember thinking, I saw clothes, I saw fancy dresses, I saw men's shoes, I saw jewelry, I saw toys, I saw beds, I saw all of this stuff. And finally, it was time to go home. And my dad started us toward the anchor store we'd come in through. And then he stopped and he said, where did I park the car? Now, I did not know yet that that is a common thing for adults to say. What I did know was that my dad could not get me home because he couldn't find the car. And so immediately, I remember this so clearly, I had this shock that I lived now in the mall. And so I immediately went through and said, okay, I saw clothes, I saw beds, I saw toys, I saw food. Okay, we can do this. We can live in the mall. We'll be okay. And then I thought the one thing that's not at the mall is Mom. And I've just I was just chilled to the bone with that thought that I would now never see my mother again because we lived at the mall and she did not. So I thought to myself, okay, we came in through this door and I saw men's shoes and I saw dresses, and I mentally mapped out that route, that winding child route that I had taken through that anchor store, and I grabbed my dad's hand and I led him back that same route through the store. And the whole time I'm thinking, if we get in there, I can sit on Dad's lap and I'm pretty sure he'll remember how to work the pedals. And I'm pretty sure I can remember all the places we turned. So I can turn the wheel and we'll get home and I'll see Mom again. Well, of course, by the time we got through the store, Dad was like, oh yeah, there's the car. And it was fine. We got home. I still didn't trust him to get home without getting lost. We walked into the house and I saw my mom and I burst into tears. And Mom and Dad were had no idea what was going on. And I said to her, we were so lost. I thought I'd never see you again. And Dad was like, I couldn't find the car for a few minutes. But that fear of not knowing and can I be certain of how I'm going to get from point A to point B is one of the driving forces in my life. I'm fine taking risks as long as I know what the steps are I need to take. I will often brag to people, you take me anywhere, I'll find my way home. You can't lose me, I'll find my way home. I got this. So that's, I think, a very benign way of seeing how it's often just a child, an adult not realizing a child has a need suddenly. Dad certainly had no idea I was that afraid. I was too afraid to tell him how afraid I was. All I had to do was find a certainty and to make sure that we got back to safety. So in some circles, especially in some church circles, they use the word original wound, which I go back and forth on how much I like using that language. It feels very loaded to me. But there is this sense that there is something that we are missing, something that we are afraid we're missing, and we might have it, but we don't realize we have it, that is kind of driving us. So unlike, say, the Myers-Briggs that looks just at behavior, the Enneagram uses behavior as a clue to what that motive is that's driving us. So does all of that make sense? All right. And then Hope, if you could just throw up for a minute the symbol. So I'm going to start talking about the 9 types. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 8, because 8, 9, and 1 are in the body center. And 8 is very easy to describe and very easy to recognize. And so I'm sure most of you will know somebody who fits into that kind of description. And so then after we do 8, 9, and 1, we will do the 2, 3, and 4, and that's the heart center. And then we'll wind up with 5, 6, and 7. So if you weren't able to download the document that was sent, that's exactly what it is right there. So yeah, you can bring that down if you want. So I'm going to start, well, first of all, over the overarching things about the body center is their main sort of emotional hook, so to speak, kind of the axle they get wrapped around is anger. That shows up in the 3 types very differently, but anger is still there. And they tend to be very concerned about control. Who has control? Who's trying to control me? And they're very, they often have issues around action, taking too much action, not taking enough action. So let's start with type 8. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the type. I'm going to share the story that little 8 told themselves to make sense of the world. And then what the lesson they took from that story is, and then some common behaviors that we can maybe notice. And for each type, I will also share some nicknames because sometimes that helps us picture the type of person we're talking about. So type 8 is sometimes called the White Knight, sometimes called the Champion. And the lesson they learned in life is the world is an unjust place where the strong take advantage of the weak. And another reason I like to start with 8s is they give you I think that's very clear to most of us, that is true sometimes. That is not the only truth. All of these stories are a fraction of the truth. And that sometimes we pay too much attention to it and use it to solve problems it's not meant to solve. So 8s are convinced that the world is unjust, that if you're weak, you're going to get taken advantage of. So their solution was, I have to be as big and strong as possible so that nobody takes advantage of me. And for most eights, they don't remember that process, but they do remember realizing they were now big and strong enough to defend themselves. So now they had to widen that circle and start taking care of other people who needed it. I worked with a woman who was a twin, is a twin, and she wasn't sure she was 8 until she heard that. And she said, I have always known, always, my entire life, that I am stronger than my twin brother and that it's my job to protect him. And I said, what do you mean by all your life? And she's like, that's my first memory is knowing that. So 8s tend to have big energy. The joke I like to make is 8s like to go a part of the anatomy I do not have to the wall all the time. They will do it harder. They will do it stronger. They will do it angrier if anger is what it takes. Most 8s are very aware of their anger because it comes and it goes a dozen times a day. And they don't often perceive it as anger. They perceive it as passion, has intensity, has really caring about something. And they can't understand why other people don't meet them with that same energy. They don't understand why people back away from that energy because they lose track of how strong that energy is. So you can usually find 8s sticking up for somebody, being angry on somebody else's behalf. They really want to be self-reliant. They really push away being vulnerable and weak. They have trouble with the idea that sometimes being vulnerable is a sign of strength, because strength is really very much that almost stereotypical macho He-Man version of strength. They can get caught up in it's me against the world. Everybody's out to get me. They do not like to be controlled. They like to be the ones doing the controlling. And in leadership positions, they would almost rather be the person who's not leading, but they know that the group needs a strong leader, so they will be that leader if it is required. My daughter is an 8, and I had to prove daily that I was the mom of the house and was worthy of that job from about the time she was 2. I had to fight my own toddler for control of the house. Because it was never, sometimes it was defiant, but it was really more about then get out of the way and I'll do it right kind of energy. And they 8s like to amp up their energy. They like to be in that sort of intense energy state a lot. So now I'm going to move us over to 9s. And 9s and 8s, I think it's just so, I love the fact that they're right next to each other, because 9s are called the peacemaker, the moderator, the mediator. And the lesson that 9s learned is that my views, my opinions, my needs don't matter. So to be part of the community, what I need to do is I need to push all of my needs down and lift other people's up. So 9s tend to be wallflowers. One of the things I was taught when I was being trained to be an Enneagram teacher, they said, if you lose track of somebody in a class, it's probably a 9. Because while you can feel an 8 walk into a room, you can't feel a 9 walk into a room. They're very low energy. They're not pushing out a lot. People love to talk to them because they are so accepting. They are so open, very non-judgmental. And they can, strangers will often come up and just share their life story with 9s. And 9's like, yeah, it happens. Because nines are not only concerned with other people's needs, but they value everybody's opinions and everybody's worth and everybody's right to be heard equally with themselves. So they have trouble making decisions on their own behalf. They have trouble standing up for themselves when they need to stand up for themselves. And they often will get pulled off what might be their own agenda to somebody else's agenda. Some nines don't even have their own agenda. They just go through life helping other people with theirs, and doesn't even occur to them that they could be doing their own thing. And for most nines that I know, that is not like in a resentful way. It just never occurs to them. They are so focused on other people. It's almost like they've stopped being a character in their own life. And their anger, they have a lot of anger, but they push it down because anger to them, conflict breaks community. So for eights, conflict between two people strengthens that relationship. And for nines, it completely breaks that relationship in their mind. Now, both are true, but that's kind of, eights just see the one and nines just see the exact opposite. So nines will push that anger down, and then suddenly something will happen and they will erupt. And I've talked to nines who've said they've had fights with their spouse that lasted a week. And then they didn't have another one for 7 years. And the idea that maybe they could just have little fights throughout those 7 years, they might not have that big life-changing one. They're not comfortable with that idea. So yeah, I think it's very interesting that those two are so close to each other. So that's 9. And now ones are sometimes called the perfectionist, sometimes called the good person. And they are one of the types, there are 3 types that we call idealists. And ones are idealists. And they can see the world in its perfect state if only everybody would follow the rules. And for ones, the rules are out here somewhere. They're a standard outside of me that I need to follow, and that you need to follow, and that everybody needs to follow. Eights will tell you what's right is what I think, and there it's right. Now we're done. But ones don't believe that rightness lives in them. So the story that they tell themselves is, I'm not good enough as I am. I'm not good. I can never be good, so I have to work at being correct. So their urge to be correct is coming from this need to prove that they're good enough. Ones are often very critical, very judgmental. If you've ever had somebody walk into a room, I feel this way with ones a lot, even ones I love dearly. Am I sitting up straight enough? If I got something on my shirt, is my hair? If you've ever met somebody who just automatically makes you feel like that, chances are they're a one. And the thing that people often forget about ones is, as judgmental as they may be about other people, that's about 1/10 of what they are giving themselves. They have very high personal standards. They feel like they're letting everyone down if they don't meet them. And their anger is kind of a low simmering resentment that is just always there. And all I can think of is, if I could see perfection, and I felt like I was the only one who could see perfection, and all these other yokels are sitting around doing nothing to get us there, I'd be resentful too. So you can kind of see where they've just got this like, oh, can you not try harder? Can you not just put your shoes away? Can you not follow the agenda? Did you have to park that way? All the time, just simmering. So that is our body center. Do we have any questions about them? You guys are the quietest group I've ever worked with. It's amazing.
They're being very good on their Zoom etiquette, but you need to unmute if you have a question.
I do have a question. Are people typically just one type, or can they have bits of different types in them?
We all have bits of all of the types. Especially as we get older, because life has kind of worn down some of those sharp edges. We are probably the most like our type when we are in our 20s. So having said that, that motivator that runs us never changes. That's really, at this point, by the time we're in our teens, that is hardwired into who we are. We might have learned how to act like a different type at work because of our job. When we get to 2s, a lot of women get a false 2 if they take a test, because that's our role in society. That's our role as mothers, as spouses, as daughters. And so they do that. We do that because it's expected, but that's not what's really driving us. Can I answer your question?
Yes.
So at our core, we're always the same, but we can pick up attributes of other types.
Well, so I consider myself a recovering perfectionist. I'm 61 years old, and my edges are definitely worn from when I was a fire and brimstone kind of person early on in life. So, but I do have to say, I still have the challenge with the self-judgment, even today, still have it. Although I don't feel as judgy about other people, I'm still judgy about myself sometimes if I'm not being intentional and aware.
Well, here's an interesting thing about that. One of my Enneagram teachers who trained me to teach is in her 80s. She's been doing this for 40 years. And she said she figures that her type of behavior, we often talk about it as being reaction, because it's not thought out, it's just an automatic reaction, pops up about 20 times a day. And so, yeah, you can easily be a recovering perfectionist and still be doing that judgmental stuff, and it's just going to pop up because it's automatic. And so the question then becomes, and this is another part of the Enneagram work, what do you do with it when it pops up? And a good chunk of the work of the Enneagram is learning to ignore what our brain does sometimes. So to be able to go, oh, I'm being judgmental again. There we go. What are you going to do? And just move on.
Well, that's good to know that there's resolution. There's ways you can, minimize whatever it is that might not be to your advantage and to your highest good.
Okay, I see somebody, is it Ada says that a 9?
Yes. Oh, just a moment, I'm just gonna, give me 2 seconds, sorry. Okay, yes, I know a 9. It's exciting. As soon as you gave the explanation, yes, it's one of my uncles, and he is a textbook case. Yes, definitely has to be him. He's a highly intelligent man, but because he does everything for others, even at his detriment, his life outcome in terms of, with his capability, it hasn't happened. But still, he has no resentment. He's still a very happy-go-lucky person. But you would like, if you speak to him, he talks, he walks, stands, and talks like a diplomat. you know, and he
Yes.
has that type of presence. And if you didn't know, you would think this man is in the highest of position or something to, you know, to equivalent to how he comes off. But it's not that he couldn't be or he doesn't have the capability. It's because he doesn't focus on himself. He when you find out his life story, you realize he pours his energy on everyone else. And even when if it's like for a charge for his work, oh my God, it's like basement charge. Like he practically charges what the tools, what the he costs the cost of materials or her cost of labor. There's no profit. And he used to, a friend that I met through him, you know, they used to work together, and the friend eventually had to say, no, this cannot work because, you know, we're working for free. It was working for free.
That is very nice, because the 9 really, I would say more than individuals, the 9 elevates the community above themselves. And so to give to the community in some way, absolutely, a 9 is all over that. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna get us started on the heart centers, and then we'll kind of move on from there. So the heart center is their main emotional kind of hook. What that gets them caught up is shame. And so heart centers often don't feel they are lovable or worthwhile. And so they're trying to fix that. They're very tied into other people, very tied into relationships, very aware of other people. And yeah, I'll get into more as we go through the types. So type 2, sometimes we call the mother, sometimes we call the helper, sometimes we call the loving person. And the message that they got early on in life is, or the story that they tell themselves is that I am not lovable the way I am. And so I have to act lovable to get love back. So it's almost like love becomes less of an emotion or even less of a relationship and more of a transaction. So I will give to you, I will help you, and then you will love me back. They are often very empathic people. They are very aware of the needs that other people have. And they can be very nurturing, very caring. The ugly side is they can get manipulative because they know kind of how to push people's buttons. And they've got that high emotional intelligence. They can also have trouble saying out loud what they need. And because there's a little bit of pride to that too, in that I am the person who helps. You, all of these people down here, are the people who need help and who I will help out of the generosity of my being. So that's kind of that ugly side of that really loving too. I knew a couple who were married. He was a 9, she was a 2, and she would put coffee in the programmable coffee pot every night when she went to bed. They worked different shifts. So, and she timed it out just right so that when he came down, there was a cup of fresh brewed coffee waiting for him. So every morning then when she would get up, the coffee pot would be rinsed out, the grounds would be in the garbage, and the cup would be put away. And she's like, I got madder and madder and madder. And she's like, I didn't even know why, but I would make that coffee. I kept making the coffee for him every night, but I would get more and more resentful and angrier. This went on for almost a year before she realized that why she was mad is he didn't obviously love her enough to make her a cup of coffee. And so that just boiled inside her. And finally she said, I got to the point where we had to have it out. I couldn't take it anymore. So I sat him down, and she was prepared for, like, it's this conversation. Either we fix this or we divorce. That's where she was mentally. And she said, you know that coffee I make you? And he's like, yeah. She says, do you like that coffee I make you every morning? He's like, yeah, that's really nice. And she said, did you ever think you could make coffee for me? And he's like, oh, no. Yeah, I'll start doing that. And he got up and left the room. And she said, of course he didn't think of doing it because he was a 9. He wasn't going to take that initiative. But if I asked him, he was all over it.
Yes, can I add, just like my uncle, the 9s, they're very happy-go-lucky. They don't mean any harm. They just sometimes just unawares.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And they're unaware that their happy-go-luckiness is causing problems sometimes for other people. So that's an example of how that 2 couldn't say, can you just make me a coffee too? I'd also like it, that was just antithetical to who she felt she was, as this loving, giving person. But that didn't stop her from getting angry and resentful that it wasn't happening. So 2s can get very angry when their loving acts are not repaid with gratitude and affection. And I made 2 sound horrible. They're really wonderful people. I have co-taught with a 2, and her lack of organization made me nuts. But she also remembered the name of every person who was in our class and greeted them by name, which I often forget to do because I'm so excited about the interesting things that are in my head. So there are a lot of things I wish I could take on from that 2 personality. So type 3 sometimes is called the executive, the champion, the celebrity. And the story that little 3 told themselves is, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy as I am. So I have to add value to every situation I'm in so that I can be valued. So 3s are often very efficient. They're usually trying to be the best they can be of whatever they are, whether that's a farmer, a stay-at-home parent, a CEO, a pastor, a gardener, whatever. It matters to them. They like that recognition. They like to be out front. They like to be center stage. They can be very charming, very charismatic. They often will walk into a room and immediately set the agenda for whatever that group is doing, whether they have the agenda or not. They're often very successful, but kind of like that 1 starts to feel responsible for the goodness of people around, the correctness of the people around them, or that 8 feels that need to protect other people. 3s can get to that point where it's not just their success they need, but they need everybody in their circle to be successful as well. When we talk about the 9s, sometimes we talk about 9s feel that life is such that if I raise myself up, I'm pushing everybody else down. So I have to push myself down to raise everybody else up. 3s have this attitude of, I'm going up and you're all coming up after me. It's very rarely a competition with other people. It's like a cheerleader kind of thing. Let's go. This is my boat. The tide's rising it, and it's going to rise your boat too. Let's all go. 3s are very good at getting a sense of what groups need them to be. I worked with a pastor who was a 3, and he said that his really favorite days were the days he went from being sweet Pastor Luke with the 80-year-olds at the Bible study in the afternoon, and then he hit the neighborhood bar just as the factory shift let out, and he was good old Luke, and he could sit there with those guys and talk about life and relationships and the sports and whatever, have a PBR, and then he'd head back to church and he'd be cool Luke hanging out with the confirmation kids in their teens. And he's like, I'm a different person each time. And he goes, then none of them is an act. They're all me, but it's a different version of me each time. And he goes, I like that being able to shift like that. The problem for threes is they do enough of that shifting, they lose track of who they are, really. They lose track of their own core and of their own heart because they're so outward focused. And sometimes I was talking with a three recently, and he said that he had heard somebody describing being a three and looking back over the high, feeling like you go through life like a hurricane. A lot of energy, a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff happening. And then you look back over your life and you can see the high water mark of all the damage you've left behind you, moving that fast and that energetically, when other people might not have been there, might not have been at that level, and that might not be what they need. As he said, he goes, do you want empathy? I'm a solution guy. Don't come to me for empathy. So even though threes are in that heart space, they don't connect well with that sort of the empathy of the two. And then I'll move us on to type 4. Type 4 is also one of the idealists. And what they can see is how authentic and connected and deep and meaningful and spiritual everything can be. But the story they tell themselves is, I can see that out there, but I'm not connected to it. I'm not seen deeply. And so to be seen, I have to act unique. I'm not seen as unique. I have to act unique. I'm not seen as having depth, so I have to act like I have depth. Twos are sometimes called the poet, the struggling artist, the dramatic person. They're very much that kind of stereotypical artistic temperament, even if they're an accountant, even if they're, working outside with their hands, they're very much that sort of artistic soul. They can be very good at knowing how to change the mood of a room or the mood of a group. So that kind of, almost kind of the flip side of the three. They don't change, but they change the group. I knew a couple, the woman was a 4, and her husband was saying that when they had fiesta wear, comes in all these bright colors, and the idea is you mix and match. And so he would set the table, what he thought looked good, and she'd come in and she'd look at it and go, almost. And she'd take this cup and put it with that saucer and put this plate over here. She goes, there. And he's like, I don't know what she did, but she was right. Those were the color combinations we needed that day at supper. So they can set a mood. They can take a classroom, light some candles, do something with the lights, pull some magic fabric out of their duffel bag, and you've got a meditation center. In a way that feels very magical to me. But they can get caught up in longing for this perfection. Sometimes for 4s, it's a nostalgia. Remember how wonderful everything was way back when. Sometimes it's longing for something they think somebody else has, not monetary things or relationships, but authentic experiences and a depth that they feel is lacking in themselves. 4s can be are full of longing. And we'll talk about anxiety in a minute, but longing is like anxiety in that it's a feeling that's not attached to anything. So if you want something, that's wanting. Longing is the feeling of wanting, but you're not sure what you want. So most fours know that immediately say that. They go, I know that feeling. I know that feeling of always longing for something, and I don't even know what it is. They can be very prone to depressive moods. And kind of like an 8 will amp up their anger to get them through the day. A 4 will amp up their sort of churning of what a lot of people would consider negative emotions, longing, pain, regret, grief. And that actually kind of feeds them and gives them a little energy boost. So sometimes that can get out of control for them, and sometimes it can alienate them from other people. So that's type 4. That closes out our heart centers. Any questions about that?
Yes, I have a question, please.
Yes.
Can you just clarify, you say the 4s get an energy boost by yearning and kind of bringing up like some negative emotions or negative past experiences that were kind of painful or hurtful? Is that right?
I wouldn't say necessarily negative past experiences, although it can be. It's more of it makes them feel real. It makes them feel deep. It makes them feel authentic. So if I'm in agony, if I'm in pain, if I'm really feeling these deep, dark, swirling emotions, then I'm real. I'm being real. And everybody else is being fake. All those happy people out there are being fake. This is the real stuff.
Are these the type of people that really usually talk very slow, kind of slow, and they're like, you know, just really just talking about gritty things? You know, I don't know if I'm expressing it right.
Yeah, sometimes, but not always.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
They're very good at being with people when they are in grief. They're very good
like that can really hold a space kind of for those type of things.
Thank you. Yes. They are very comfortable holding that space. The problem is sometimes they live in that space and it's hard for them to get out of that space. I've known some 4s who have a tendency to find people who are in those situations just so they can be the person who holds the space for them in an unhealthy way. Because they're doing it sort of for their own needs as opposed to helping that person. So that's what I mean when I say they kind of get carried away with those emotions.
Question. So I'm a 4, and I can agree with the part and not really understanding what I'm longing for. But at the same time, there are actually different levels of within each of the types, sort of like a healthy and unhealthy.
Yes, absolutely.
In there. And so I think some of the things that you've described may be more characteristic of unhealthy characteristics of the different types. And some of them were positive, but I think, you know, really it's hard to describe a type and sort of give like a singular definition of what that type is about.
Yes,
right? So
it is.
If you have healthy characteristics, like you said at the outset, especially as you get older, you tend to pick up characteristics of other types, and it becomes a little,
yeah.
The edges have been worn away, and so you're not as maybe easy to identify, or even your own personal characteristics are not falling within the classical definitions. So.
Yes, yeah, you're right. I should have made that clear that I'm trying to give a range of what's healthy and then what's unhealthy. We all, most of us are in that mid-range, and we all kind of vacillate in that mid-range. I know there are days when I am not the healthiest 6 I could be. But yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a 4 with a 5 wing, so I like to read up on things.
So now, Stephen, I'm going to ask you then, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit since you volunteered. What would you say your greatest gift is as a 4?
I feel that I tend to be, I'm an empath. So I feel like I can, even though 4s on an unhealthy range can be self-absorbed, they're also recognize other people and maybe are able to show compassion or sort of put themselves in other people's shoes and relate to them.
Can I share with you what I think?
That's my sense anyway.
One of the things that amazes me about 4s is I had a 4 who I worked with for a while, and he had an amazing ability to talk to somebody for what to me seemed like no amount of time at all, and to know what was special and unique about them. And then was able to talk to somebody else for, again, what seemed like no amount of time, figure out what was special and unique about them that connected with the first person's uniqueness. And then was able to take these 2 people who'd never met, introduce them to each other, and connect them almost immediately at a much deeper level. And I saw that. I saw him do that to other people. He did it to me a few times. And it was amazing. I'm like, how did you even know that about me? I don't think I ever told that. You know, I just felt very known and seen. It just was amazing. So yeah, I think that's almost something besides empathy. That's like a deep listening and a deep watching of other people.
And I have a comment that also there's a mirror aspect to that, where he's capable of that, so he can give that. That's why there's a gift, because he's a mirror for other people. I just want to jump in that I can't scroll down, but Braylon asked, what was the self-talk for us tell themselves? And I would say the self-talk that I heard is that they say I must be unique, but then they may not feel unique. Is that accurate? But there's more to it than that.
Yes, no, that's a lot, or deep, unique, or like deep, or authentic.
I don't feel that.
I don't feel it
that way. Yeah.
Yep. And I saw it's a way that it's a thing that I have to put on instead of just accepting that I really am.
Yeah. And also, is there more drama in the heart area than the others? Is that what you said? Or is it just one of them that has more drama?
The 4 tends to be, that's kind of I think the 4 has more visible drama.
Yeah. And I don't mean that as a negative. It's just the person that you just, someone who can be an actor and they can come from their depth and you just go, oh,
I think both of those would apply to, I think, both 3s and 4s, not so much 2s. 2s usually like to stay back a little bit from the attention. So now we'll move into the head types. And the head types' main emotional reaction is anxiety. So anxiety is the feeling of fear without being attached to an object. So I've heard people say that fear is seeing a snake in your bedroom, and anxiety is worrying that there might be snakes in your bedroom. So fear is a very helpful reaction. It keeps us alive. Anxiety is not that helpful. And people in the head type that are called head types because a lot goes on up here all the time. And it's different for the 3 types. And they're concerned with anxiety, and one of their things they like to do is to gather information of some kind. So type 5 is sometimes called the investigator, sometimes called the questioner, sometimes called the observer. And type 5s were very easily overwhelmed as very, very young children by the demands other people put on them, especially emotional demands. These were things they didn't understand. They didn't know what to do with that all of this emotional stuff. So they pushed it away and went back to things that I can know and I can see and I can touch. And so 5s are very good at compartmentalizing and keeping their thoughts over here, keeping their anger over here, and just doing what needs to happen. They can be very, sometimes they have trouble with social cues because that's kind of some of that squishy emotional stuff. But they're always watching, they're always observing, they're always taking in data. 5s can often leave a party and tell you where everybody was sitting, what everybody was wearing, what they ate, all of this stuff. So 5s often need a lot of quiet time to mentally sort through all of this data they've been taking in all day. And I also, like Stephen, I have a strong 5 wing. And sometimes after, I would come home from some of my Enneagram trainings, high as a kite with all this fabulous information I've got. Halfway through the drive, I'm in tears of exhaustion because this processing all of this information is just burned me out. So, so 5s try to keep things very clean and clear and keep messy emotions out of it. I have a friend who's in 5, and she talks about driving home from her mother-in-law's office or mother-in-law's house. And she's like, there was a thing. There was just like a thing, like right here. And she put her hand up like on her breastbone. And I didn't even know what it was. And I just took it. And this is her hand motion before she even knew anything about the Enneagram. So I took it out and I looked at it and I said, I don't have time for you right now. And I put it on the shelf. And so she said, I drove home and then I had to get ready for school the next day. And then I taught, and then a couple of days went by. Finally, a few days later, I was feeling rest. I'm like, okay, no, let's take a look at you. Oh, your anger. I was angry. That's what was going on. There's often a delay between what the 5 actually feels and the 5 actually acknowledging it. They very rarely feel their feelings right in the moment because it's too much, so they shove it aside. 5s are excellent in a crisis. The house is on fire. The 5 is not the one who's going to be running around screaming. The 5 is going to be the one who's getting everybody out of the house and trying to put the fire out. They keep a cool head that way. They can be, because they observe so much and they pull so much in, they can be very witty because they can do this, connecting this thing to this thing to this thing in new ways. That same skill makes them very wise. They can see new solutions, new options out of bringing in all this data and putting it together in different ways that the rest of us are not. It can be very hard, however, to be in a relationship with a 5 because face-to-face love that's like this is too intense for them. I was talking actually to the same friend, and she said, my husband and I figured out that his idea of love is this. And she's like, I just can't. It makes me so uncomfortable. She goes, my idea of love is this. We're both doing our thing, but I can feel your shoulder blades pressing against mine, and I know you've got my back. And that is such a great feeling. So, having that image really helped them sort out a lot of stuff and find some common ground to where he could get his needs met and she could get her needs met. But fives will be very interested in everybody's point of view and everybody's opinion. They might not be aware of what everybody needs, but they really are interested in what everybody's thinking. So they can also, like a 9, be very non-judgmental and very open, just because an idea is an idea, and that's amazing. So let's hear all the ideas. They can also tend to minimize their personal needs to the point where they might not even realize they're hungry, because bodies are really there to carry the brain around, because the brain is where it's at. And they can also always feel the need to be prepared, to always prepare. I know 5s who have trouble leaving on vacation because they're never done preparing to leave on vacation. And they have trouble making that jump to go, we're just gonna stop thinking about it and we're gonna do it. So that's a 5. Type 6, sometimes called the skeptic, sometimes also called the questioner, sometimes called the loyal skeptic or the loyalist. I had a woman in my class who said that she knew she was a 6, and she said, my family calls me the dream killer, because 6s are your natural troubleshooter. Because I tell people the inside of my brain feels like a radar screen sweeping constantly looking for what's going to go wrong, what might go wrong, so I can get a plan so it doesn't happen. So I have had to teach myself to say, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. But have we thought about what we're going to do if it rains? To, affirm other people's ideas before I jump in with, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Because not everybody knows that that is my way of supporting your plan, is to find where the potential trouble spots are and take care of them. So 6s are probably the most obviously anxious of all the head types. So much so that we often don't realize we're anxious. Kind of like a fish doesn't know it's in water. I read the description of 6s and I was like, that, that. But I said, I'm not that anxious. And it was about 3 years into my own personal Enneagram work, I realized, no, I am anxious all the time. It's just my standard, and I hide it from myself. Because then if I know how anxious I am, I'm just going to spin. So 6s can be very engaging, very warm. And this is the part that always makes me anxious, because I can just see you all going, really? She thinks she's engaging and warm and entertaining? But it's a defense mechanism. So we can look like 2s, but 2s are doing it to get love. 6s are doing it so you don't get mad at us. So that's why there's behaviors that the types share, but the reasons for doing those behaviors are very different. And 6s are it takes a while. 6s are usually kind of suspicious. It takes a while to win us over, but once you've won us over, we're there. And the thing that I really value about being a 6 is I can see somebody's flaws and still be just as loyal to them. But I do not need that kind of perfection or high standards from people. If they've won me over, I'm there. It's going to take a lot to lose me. So that's 6. Hope, it looks like you got a question.
I see that Ada has her hand up. Do you have a comment with your hand up?
Yes, yeah. I had a question. I had it when 5 because it was we didn't have a question time after 5.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry, it's okay. And it ties it a little, and I have one that ties into 6 too. So I just specifically about 5. Are the 5s more likely than the other types to be the procrastinators? I know you mentioned kind of like an analysis paralysis type of thing. It's like that's more like 5.
I wouldn't say more. I mean, 9s are also big procrastinators.
Okay.
But they do fall to it because they don't have all their ducks in a row yet. And they don't like to take action until all their ducks are in a row.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say necessarily more, but that's why they do it.
But they're more likely to be the analysis paralysis out of the head types.
Both. I would say there's a slight difference. I think 5s tend to need more information. So they do more research. So it's almost like research analysis. Mm-hmm. 6s are going to go over the same 5 facts over and over and over and over again.
Oh, really? Oh, the same 5 facts, supposed to bring in more.
Right.
So the overwhelm and overload will be the 5. That's overwhelm and overload. Too much information.
Yep.
Brought in by them, not the outside world necessarily.
Exactly.
And then so another thing I wanted to this is between 5 and 6. So the 5, you said they're more likely to, it's a somatically, they're more likely to lose track of their body or feeling or whatever, just for the force of just trying to do whatever they're trying to get done. And whereas 6 is more likely to lose track of the fact that they may be anxious.
Yes. I actually have a list now of about 10 physical manifestations of my anxiety that will come, and then I'll go, like the first one I noticed was I would have trouble swallowing. Not really, it felt like I was gonna have trouble swallowing. And I was like, it's gotta be cancer. It's gotta be cancer. So I looked it up. Oh no, what's the first thing that comes up? Anxiety, stress. That symptom went away almost immediately. And all of a sudden I'm eating Tums by the fistful. And then I'm like, oh, so that's where you are now. And then I had this strange thing that would happen where this joint on my thumb, where my thumb joins my hand, would hurt. And I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, is it arthritis? What am I doing? What I was doing was wrapping my fist around my thumb as tight as I possibly could and putting it into the pocket of my jeans. And that's where my anxiety was. And so when I noticed that, I'd stop, my thumb would feel fine, and then I'd start yawning compulsively. And so even now I have those symptoms show up sometimes. So I have to say to myself, you are anxious. That's okay, but you are anxious. You're anxious. That's okay. Treat myself like a little dog. It's okay. You're not in trouble because you're anxious. You're anxious, but that's okay. To really practice saying, that's what this feeling is. That's what this pain is. It's like my brain has given up trying to get me to pay attention to it. And it's going through my body. So yeah, that is the thing that 6s are really blind to, is their own anxiety.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your questions. All right, unless there's anything more about 5s and 6s, I'm going to move us on to 7. And 7 is a fun one to end on because 7s are very fun. Sometimes they're called the epicure. Sometimes they're called the adventurer. Sometimes they're called the gourmand. And they are also one of the idealists. And instead of a perfect world that's free of flaws or a world that's full of depths and meaning and authenticity and deep connection, they see a world that is delicious and exciting and fun and full of joy and full of stimulating experiences and amazing people and everything that's fun and uplifting and encouraging, and it's all going on all the time. But life gets in their way and they can't do it all. So kind of what the thing that sevens grew up with is they don't believe, they feel like life is robbing them of joy and robbing them of all these delicious experiences that are all out there for the taking. And so, and it's robbing that through things called going to work, meeting deadlines, having talks about bills, feeling bad. All of these mundane and unpleasant things that make up life, as well as all that joy, is a personal attack to keep them away from what they could be. I work with a 7, and his favorite statement is, there is a parade around every corner. And my response to him is always like, coming from my 6, I'm sure there's something waiting for me around the other corner. I just don't think it's a parade. But he's always waiting for the next best, great thing. This is wonderful, but the next thing's going to be even better. So 7s don't often trust they have what it takes to deal with stress, to deal with boredom, to deal with a difficult conversation, to deal with disappointment. So when those things rear their heads, they're out of the way. They're off to something that's fun. 7s are so positive and so fun, they often don't know they're stressed and they're anxious. I talked with a couple, and she was a 1. I'm really not sure how well they actually got along. She was a 1 and he was a 7, and she's like, I'm just always stressed, but he doesn't know what stress is. And I just looked at him and goes like, oh, I have no clue. I have no idea what she's talking about when she talks about being stressed. And I'm like, okay. And as we kind of talked through, I started talking about how one of the anxiety for 7s is I might be in a conversation that's not going to be pleasant. I might have something unpleasant to deal with, and I can't do that. And I said, that terrifies 7s. And I looked over, and this guy had gone sheet white. And I said, now do you know what stress is? And he's like, yeah, I'm stressed about that all the time. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Join the club. So there's that you can feel a 7 walk into a room. They're just so bubbly. And again, this is not a competition. They want you to be part of this excitement and fun and joy as well. And they will change everything to make that happen. But if you're too much dead weight, they will leave you and move on because they do not trust that they have what it takes to stay put in a hard situation. So that's 7s. Any question about 7s?
Yep.
There we go. Hi. Yeah. So when you say they don't trust that they have enough confidence to be in a hard conversation, or they can't, is it that they don't trust themselves, or they just can't do it? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a fine line.
Yep, it is. Yeah. I think what it is I know 7s who can do it. I know they can, but it's hard and it's very painful to the point where for a lot of 7s, it turns into, I can't. Okay. some of the types can charge into difficult conversations pretty easily. 5s can do that. 4s can do that. 8s can do that. But 7s really, they can't do it easily.
Okay, that it makes sense. It's kind of, I think that might be a little bit me at times. It's like, okay, this is a difficult situation. Put it off over there. Oh, I've forgotten about it. I don't need to talk about it now. I totally forgot I'm supposed to do this or have that conversation, and so that, yeah. And then every once in a while I remember it and it's like, oh, no.
Yes. And it feels like a sword in your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah. Or in my back. Yeah. It's like, and that makes sense. It's that difficult conversation.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Can I ask you a couple questions, Erica?
Sure.
Are you good at reframing? So if a situation is difficult, something's gone awry, something's gone wrong, can you switch that around and make it positive?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's a very useful gift.
Yeah. And I do that for my clients a lot. I'm a massage therapist, but they talk to me about a lot of things. And I just call it taking a step to the side to look at things differently, change your perspective. Mm-hmm. And if you call it, I change perspective on difficult things a lot, I think.
Which is a legitimate way of dealing with a lot of difficult things. But that's the only one. That's kind of the one that 7s use almost exclusively.
That's funny. Okay. We were going through all of these and it's like, we got to the last one. Huh. Maybe. And then when that came up, it's like, oh, okay. The difficult conversation.
I didn't mention this because this is really Enneagram 101. See if you're interested in continuing on. But has your hearing the different types described? That's the reaction. If you go, if you're like, oh yeah, I can do that sometimes. Oh yeah, I can do that sometimes. That's not your type. We can all do that sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're like, that's
like, oh, me. Son of a gun. Yeah, exactly.
And that's one reason why I focus on the negative, because we recognize our negative stuff so quickly. Mm-hmm. I was reading Richard Rohr is written one of the well-known books about the Enneagram. When I was first starting it, I was reading the description of a 6 going, am I not? 2 sentences. And honestly, I cannot remember what both of them are now, but one sentence right after the other. The first one made me laugh out loud. I was alone in a room and I still remember my voice echoing in that room because I laughed so loudly. The second one, I slammed the book shut and I literally said out loud, how did he know? Put the book down and pick it back up for 3 weeks. Because I was convinced if I opened that up, Richard Rohr would be staring straight into my soul. And that's when you know that's your type. You have some kind of physical reaction, laughter, tearing up, a flush, a real strong pushback. I had somebody who argued with me that I never even told her she was a 6. After every class, she said, well, this is why I'm not a 6. I'm like, okay. And then the next, like, well, no, this is why I'm not a 6. It's like, okay. So did you maybe think that maybe that pushback is why you're a 6?
Well, I think so a 7 would also be someone that might be more self-employed. Because of the job thing, they don't want to be bound by a 9 to 5. It's like, I'm going to make my own schedule. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to block it out. I'm going to go do this. And
Yep.
Okay.
And actually the 7 that I work with is on salary, but I found out recently he was able to create his own job description. Which is awesome. Like how he managed that. I don't know. It's a 7 thing, I guess.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. And
Awesome.
sevens
Thank
are
you.
very charming and often do get their way because of that.
Without saying they're manipulative, we could call it charm.
I happen to believe we're all manipulative sometimes. You know, we're all just doing what we need to do to get what we need.
It done. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
clever. You. Reframe it as clever.
Yeah. Clever. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, please.
Yeah, Ada, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Are sevens more likely to be like kind of like the even though they may have a private side, but also be like more of a social butterfly, the hostess with the mostest type?
You hit it on the head. Yes.
Okay.
They love to host. They love to be your guests. Although if you've invited them to your house, they may have 3 other things that night in case yours is too boring. And they will move on.
Right.
Always overscheduled. Always got lots of things going on, lots of things to do, because how can you say no?
Yes. Oh yeah. It's like, oh, when as soon as one thing is over, planning for where's the next event, where's the next great wedding, where's the next vacation, where's the next this or that.
Exactly. And it's kind of hard to see where sevens fit in with that headspace. But the thing about sevens is sometimes they have more fun planning that next event and thinking about it and anticipating it than they do going to it. So that's where you kind of get into that headspace. They really like to think about their plans and plan their plans and replan.
Anticipation is so exciting.
Exactly. Yes. And it's always perfect when you anticipate it.
Yeah, I think I get it. And then the aspects that they don't really want to deal with are like those real issues that, which sign was that? Fours, those real grieving and nostalgic and those type of issues that the fours lives in or can live in. The sevens, no way. They don't even want to see it.
Yep, exactly. And actually in life, sometimes fours and sevens can look like each other because they can both be that sort of like, here's something that's beautiful, here's something that's lovely. But a seven, the big key is that a seven is an optimist and a 4 tends to be a pessimist.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a 7 in mind. That's why I'm really clear. So I know that person is a 7. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, I'm going to move us through. We've got 15 minutes left, and I'm going to give you a little information about kind of what we do with this information. And then I'm just going to fill you in a little bit on the wings and the lines. So, you're never going to be able to fix your type. Once you find out what your type is, you will never be able to fix it. It is who you are. It is the source of your greatest gifts. We need those gifts that come with your type. So it's not a thing that's broken. What you need to do is to develop a healthy relationship with your type. And so the very first part of that is just acceptance. I accept that I get anxious. I don't like it, but I accept it. I get that. And then that's coming in with what that awareness of what does that feel like for me? When does it show up? How do I react when it shows up? And the more you can become aware of how your type of behavior shows up, the more you're going to get a little tiny gap between the time your button is pushed and the time you react without thinking as your type. And in that gap, you can say, you know what? I can say, Beth, you're going into this meeting and you already know 10 things that are wrong with this plan. And somebody's going to start talking about it and they're going to go too fast. They're going to get too excited and you are going to start blurting out all the things that could go wrong. Take a break, act like Paul, bring your 7 energy in and reframe that a little bit. Build that up, build them up. And so we kind of start I think of our type as our tool. Most of us have a death grip on one tool when there are actually a toolbox at our feet of 9 tools that we could be using. So it's realizing you've got a death grip on a hammer. You do a lot of stuff with a hammer, but maybe when you're making a cake, a whisk would be a better tool. And so it's realizing you've got that hammer. You can't pick up a whisk until you let go of that hammer. So some of it's just letting go, being more aware of your type, and just kind of going, yep, that's me. I'm angry. What are you going to do? It's a thing I do. And bring that level of energy to it. Most of us are going to come in and try to fix our type with our only tool, which is our type. So I will get more anxious about my anxiety and how that's showing up in my life, and it just spirals down. A 1 is going to catch themselves being judgmental and then judge themselves for being judgmental, and it just spirals down. So the more you can just treat your type as just a thing and just kind of go, yep, that's me. Did it again. What are you going to do? Nothing burned down. We're okay. Maybe next time I won't do it. And just be as loving and compassionate to yourself as you can be. I like to use my type behavior as an alarm system and kind of go, oh man, I'm really anxious. I wonder if I'm tired. I wonder if I'm hungry. I wonder if I'm just overwhelmed and I need to just sit down and turn off for a little while. So just to see, why am I reacting? What button's being pushed that I can just kind of let go of? And then we start to kind of go, where else, what other sort of other types are easily available to me that I can use? And then Hope, if you could throw that screen back up. And this is where it starts to get into the numbers stuff. You will see on the screen that every number is connected by lines to 2 other numbers. And those numbers are called, sometimes they're called the lines of integration and disintegration. I do not like those terms because that feels like if I go here, I'm healthy. If I go that way, I'm not. That's not what it is. I like to use the terms stress and security. And so as a 6, my security number is 3, which means when I am feeling secure, I naturally start acting more like a 3. I get out of that analysis paralysis. I can take action. I can move things forward. I can be efficient. I can stand up. My anxiety is just kind of off here in the background. I can stand up in front of a group. I can lead a meeting. I can teach a class. I can be the center of attention, and I'm fine with that. And it doesn't cost me because I'm kind of have easily moved into that 8 space or into that 3 space. However, also if I need security and I'm not doing well, I can move into the low end of that 3. And I can get caught up in doing things just to do them. And then just like, look, I've got a list of things that I don't really need to do, but see, I crossed one off, I crossed one off, I crossed one off, and I can almost get hyperactive in that space. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can move to 9. And 9 is where I am grounded and I am planted. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. 6, 3 is stress. So that's a healthy stress, you know? I think of it as like show energy, or it can be just that unhealthy busyness stress. Sorry for misspeaking. When I'm feeling secure, I can move to that 9 space and I'm relaxed and I'm carefree and I'm just planted. 9, those of you who know 9s, they have this huge sort of planted oak tree type energy. And I can move to that space and I can just be calm. if I go there in an unhealthy way, if I'm not careful, I can find myself going to a really unhealthy 9 space we call self-necrotization. I'm dead to myself. I'm turning on a show I've watched 10, 12 times already, and my brain is just turned off and there's nothing going on because that's all I can seem to do to take care of myself. So I don't want to get caught up in the numbers. This is kind of like next level Enneagram, but that's what those lines are for. So what that means for us making choices is, oh, and then the numbers on either side of you, no matter what your number is, are your wings. That tends to color a little bit the type you are. So I can tell, as much as I wish I had a strong 7 wing and was more happy-go-lucky and optimistic, I can go there, but I'm much more likely to get into that 5 space. But those are 2 spaces that I know what that feels like in me. I know what it feels like to access that 7. And there are times when I can do that consciously and go, you know what? Right now, oh, my daughter and I are on a trip. It's raining, blew a tire. Look, it's an adventure. You know, let's go knocking on doors so we can find somebody who will let us use their phone so we can call for a tow truck. Isn't this fun getting to meet new people? And I got very good at that as a single mother, of making every little mishap an adventure. I can also say, okay, you're stressed, but you know what you're going to do? You're going to take that. You're going to go, I don't have time for you right now. And you're going to put that stress on a shelf and you're going to get done what needs to get done. So that's one way we can start learning the gifts of the other types, is to look at our wings and go, can I feel that? If I'm a 9, can I feel that 8 energy? Can I see what it's like to have righteous anger and to state my peace and to plant my flag in the ground? And can I move there when I need to? Or can I see what it is to have a 1 and have a list made and do things because it's right and good and proper to do things and get on with my day? So kind of explore, if you kind of get a feeling for what you are, explore those wings. And then start exploring what the ones you're connected to. Can I go to the healthy or mid-range of those types and take on some of their attributes?
And just to be clear, the wing means, like, if you're a 9, your wing is 1 and 8. And
yes.
So it's left and right of the numbers. So
yep, left and right.
Wing for 2 is 1 and 3. Wing for 4 is 3 and 5. Yep. Okay.
Yep. And most of us have one that's stronger than the other. And so that's why when I say, like, and I think Stephen brought it up, he's a 4 with a 5 wing. That's usually our strongest wing, and we can really feel that. And so that's one of the things. Real quick, when I started out, I'm just fascinated that 8 and 9 are each other's wings. That you've got that anger and that rejection of anger, and that determination and that easygoingness, that people can kind of move between that so easily. I'm sorry, Hope, you said you were saying?
It was just that this is individual for whoever's strength. It wouldn't be like, you're like 3 is the strength is 4. Like, there isn't any math related to the left side is 1, the right side of it is the other. It's just whichever that individual person knows is their strength, that they,
whichever you feel it in you is your strength.
So it's my wing versus it's like everybody who's a 4 doesn't have their wing as a 5. It has their strength. It's just, that would be very individual.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
This is so detailed, and the esoteric depth of this just goes and goes and goes, because there's also a spiritual elevation of it as well. So your spiritual elevation is this other aspect of running this. And so, I love this topic. Thank you.
You are welcome. And I think I've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to make one little pitch, and that is, if you want to know what your type is, I would encourage that you find somebody who does typing sessions and can talk you through it. And that's something a lot of us in the Twin Cities do. I do that. I can recommend somebody if you're interested. Second would be to read some descriptions and see where you get that jolt. My last recommendation would be to take an online test, because they mostly test for behaviors. And most of us at this point know how to win at taking tests and get the answer we wish we got. And so I think it's better done in more nuanced ways. And tests are usually at best about 60% accurate. So they can give you something to kind of go on. If you do take a test, I would say then read that description of those types and really double check it against your own wisdom and your own knowledge of yourself. And that's my last pitch.
And would you just say what your website is? Because I have it linked, but for those people who are on a phone.
Yes.
Just state what your website
is. It's my full name. It's www.Beth Beaty with one T. So BETHBEATY.com. You can also, and I feel awful saying this, I don't check my website as much as I should. The easiest way to get a hold of me would really be my email, which is BABEATY@gmail.com. And yeah, I would be glad to.
Say it again so people can write it down, make sure.
Yep. BABEATY@gmail.com.
And you also have ongoing kind of meetings about this, don't you?
We do. We have the chapter. We have a local chapter here in Minneapolis. We have monthly meetings, and then we have monthly discussion groups. And one discussion group is open for anybody who wants to join. And the other is for people who self-identify as practitioners. So people who use it professionally in some way. And the meetings are open to anyone. I believe there's a $20 fee, $20 charge per meeting. And then you can, if you're a member, it's free. And I can give you that website too, if you would like. It's MN for Minnesota, MN-IEA.org. And the IEA is International Enneagram Association.
I'm going to try to type that into, so MN and then dash would be the hyphen thing?
Yeah.
Copy it, the hyphen thing. See if I got it right. IEA.org. It seems pretty simple. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Yeah, I really encourage all of you. Beth has really affordable options too, and this is a wonderful way to get support without the deep. Okay, I'm a psychologist, to be upfront about that, but without the deep dive of therapy, this is a wonderful way to have self-awareness, and also really, really helpful for couples. Anybody in a relationship, and even friendships, so get in touch with Beth. This is fascinating stuff, and it will be helpful to you. And that's why we brought her.
Thank you. And I was not paying Hope to say that, so thank you, Hope. No. And thank you guys. You've been such a great group to talk to, and I really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. That was wonderful.
Awesome.
Yay.
And so, yeah, I hope everybody gets outside in the next couple of days before it snows again at the end of the week. So.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you, Beth, and also Hope for inviting her. You did such a great job of distilling all the types in this short period of time so well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you, Hope and Berta, for your help getting this going.
Our pleasure.
And you did a great job with a really complex topic. I mean, I've been to 2-day workshops covering this, so it's not
Yeah,
easy. I know it's impossible in an hour and a half.
that was my big thing, especially loving information as much as I do, to be like, what do I not say?
Yes.
So,
excellent. Thank you.
all right.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was great.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, Hope, I can get whatever was in the chat later, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also this is being recorded, and I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna learn to listen to it again. This was awesome. I changed my mind like 4 times.